I want to thank you all so very much for being here today. As you know, Moby's in our studio, that's why y'all are here. As we all know, he's a singer, songwriter, producer, DJ, and I'd like to also say philosopher, having read your essays, if you don't mind. Is that cool?
Sure.
Sure.
I mean, I was a philosophy major at school,
Yeah.
and I was not a. The nice thing about having been a philosophy major is the moment you tell someone you were a philosophy major at school, they assume that you're smart.
Nice.
I was a really bad student.
Yeah.
So like I was a lazy philosophy major and I didn't do most of the reading, but I'll be at a cocktail party and I'll say, oh, I was a philosophy major, and people immediately get quiet and they're like, oh, I guess you're smart. And it's like, no, I'm dumb as a box of rocks.
Well, but I think there's always that difference between like homework and having a brain and thinking about things.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you choose philosophy? Like, why did you want to study that?
Why, that's a good question.
Do you know?
I think of all the majors that were offered to me, I really wanted to go to Brown and be a semiotics major, but I couldn't afford it and they wouldn't accept me because I wasn't smart enough. So I went to UConn, and philosophy was the only major that seemed interesting. Like the others seemed really vague, like being a history major or being an English major. And philosophy, I guess I thought of myself as being relatively philosophical and curious about the issues that philosophy dealt with. And I took a couple of sort of like intro to philosophy classes and I just loved them. Because, I mean, to an extent, I like the idea. I was also considering going into law at one point because I like the idea of putting forth an argument and then having to be an apologist for it and defend it. You know, as opposed to just saying, I believe this subjectively, putting something forth that is ostensibly subjective and then having to support it with logic, you know, with evidence and argument. I really like that.
I think that's awesome.
Maybe because I'm uptight and I like the idea of like when things are just purely exist in the realm of the subjective, it's just people sharing subjective opinions. And I like the idea of being able, like if someone posits something, to be able to try and whittle away at what they've posited and look at the sort of like the logical underpinnings and do away with them.
Yeah. Well, I was telling some of my friends I'd have a chance to sit down with you, and I want to talk about your philosophy, how you got into veganism, and how that sort of applies not only on that meta level, but what made you decide to be a vegan?
What got me into veganism was like equal parts like compassion and altruism, and also a desire to feel superior and to judge people who disagreed with me.
Awesome.
So I loved animals, so that's the honorable side of it. Like, I had this simple realization when I was about 18 years old. I was like, well, I love my cat and I love my dog, but I'm eating a hamburger. And I was like, well, my cat is a quadruped, my dog is a quadruped, we're all mammals, and a cow is a quadruped. Like, so how can I differentiate between these? And so clearly, like, if my cat is sentient and capable of complicated emotions, you know, the cat is afraid sometimes, it's happy sometimes. And so I was like, this must be true for cows as well. So that got me to stop eating cows. And then the more I found out about how animals were treated at factory farms, it just led me to be a vegan. And also, I mean, I've taken a lot of positions in my life that were just based on, honestly, like, you know, insecurity and fear. And so like being a vegan for a while, like I was a really militant, intolerant vegan.
Okay.
And that was just based on my desire to somehow feel superior to people. And my years of militancy, I realized my militancy wasn't advancing the cause of veganism, it was just annoying my friends.
Yeah.
So now, you know, I'm a vegan, and I'd rather talk to people about their lifestyle choices and in turn talk about my lifestyle choices without being didactic and trying to convince anyone to agree with me. Because for the longest time I thought that in order for me, I don't know, to justify my existence to myself, I had to convince people to agree with me. And now, if you agree with me, fine. If not, that's fine too. You know, maybe in a couple of years I'll be eating Burger King, and that the person I'm trying to convince to be a vegan will be a militant vegan. Like, you know, life is complicated and things change. So.
Well, then I guess I'd be interested, since we were talking about disco lies momentarily earlier. how did a music video like that, and actually I don't even know, how much say do you have in a music video like Disco Lies, where, yeah, so this is...
Where a 6-foot-tall pimp chicken
Yeah.
Chases Colonel Sanders through the streets of Mexico City and eventually kills him and eats him.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, there's... I couldn't actually be in the video, so they found someone who sort of looked like me and put glasses
Got
on
it.
him. So
Okay.
that's some guy who sort of looks like me pretending to be Colonel Sanders.
Yeah.
And the idea for the video, oddly enough, I had nothing to do with it.
Really?
My friend Evan Bernard, we were trying to come up with an idea for the video, and we couldn't come up with anything good. And at the very end, he said, how about this? Colonel Sanders in Mexico City, a gigantic pimp chicken gets his revenge on Colonel Sanders, and it's gruesome and funny. And I was like, well, that sounds fantastic. So as much as I applaud, I think it's a great video, and I can, with a degree of objectivity, say it's a great video because I had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then the original context of the song, was it thinking about animal rights, or what was, because like I've gone through the lyrics before, what were you thinking about?
The song has nothing to do with the video, yeah.
I love it. I love it. Awesome.
The song is just an old school disco song.
Yeah.
And there literally is no correlation between the lyrics and the message of the video. And I think Evan, the man who made the video, he's a meat eater.
There you go.
I don't think he has an animal rights bone in his body. But it is this fantastic, funny, really grim, like I realized you can be as graphic and didactic as you want to be, as long as you make people laugh. You know, like if this had been, you know, a sort of dry treatise on the virtues of animal rights, no one would be interested. But it's a 6.5-foot tall pimp chicken. And so, oddly enough, a 6.5-foot tall guy dressed in a pimp chicken costume on the streets of Mexico City is a better advocate for animal rights than some dry academic.
Yeah. Well, and I'm interested in that vein. You said you had a chance to go to animal rights, I don't know, on field trips or whatever, to go see how the animals are treated. Where did you go? What were those experiences like?
Well, I feel like I've spent a lot of time either reading about the conditions at factory farms or visiting slaughterhouses. And I've done my time, and I'm already a vegan and an animal rights activist, so I don't have to watch, like every now and then someone will come up with a new movie documenting the horrors of the factory farm system. And I'm like, I don't want to see it. I've seen it before. It horrifies me. I'm already a vegan. You're not going to convince me more. So I'd rather, like I have friends who do undercover work in laboratories and on factory farms. I don't know how they do it. Like I couldn't do it. You know, like day in, day out for 6 months or a year, they'll work in a laboratory where they're doing horrifying tests on animals, purely to document it and then like bring criminal prosecution against these labs. Or to work in factory farms and to document it, to again, bring criminal prosecution against a lot of these meat processing places. But for an animal rights activist to spend a year eviscerating chickens and killing animals, I mean, I'm amazed that they can do it. I couldn't do it. I'm too much of a sissy.
Well, I think you and me both are. I know you've done your time, so then I want to ask you my favorite question to ask vegans. What is your favorite meal to cook if you're a cook?
Well, I'm a really bad cook. When I first left home, I was broke and hungry. And so I learned how to do the most rudimentary bachelor vegan cooking. So, like, make some brown rice, open a can of beans, and put salsa on top of it. That's the extent. I can make pancakes. My ex-girlfriend, actually, we were breaking up, and we had the funniest breakup I think anyone's ever had. It was on Halloween a couple of years ago, and I was dressed as an 80s heavy metal guy. So I had a like head to toe, like red leather, like metal, like think of, I don't know, some metal, like Poison, circa 1988. So I looked like I had a wig on and dark glasses, and she had prosthetic makeup on, so she looked like she was from Planet of the Apes. So we were having our final breakup conversation with her dressed up as Planet of the Apes person and me dressed up like 1988 guitar player in Poison. Yeah. And we were like, we knew this was the end. And her last parting shot, she was like, and by the way, I never liked your pancakes.
Wow.
And I was like, you can insult me. You can say that I was bad in bed. You can say that I was I wasn't very interesting to talk to. But don't insult my pancakes. They were not very good, to be honest with you. Like, really, like, just, bog standard blueberry pancakes that are perfectly good for me because I have very low standards when it comes to food. Yeah. But that's why I should never, if I want to, like, date someone and impress them, I should never cook for them.
Okay, so then where would you take them?
Depends what city I'm in.
Pick a place, New York, LA.
New York has good vegan food, but not great vegan food. LA actually has much better vegan food. There's a restaurant in Silver Lake called Crew. Okay. And I'm convinced that the people who work there think that I'm stalking them. Because in the last week I've eaten there 5 times. Yeah. Either they think I'm stalking them, or like I'm a homeless guy who lives in the dumpster behind. And they're like,
why not? Yeah. In that vein, because I went back and I watched some of your interviews, and I know you talk about when you grew up, you didn't have a lot of money. Mm-hmm. When I think about people maybe who would be interested in being vegan, but whether it's their economic status or they're in a public school that serves Cheetos and stuff all day, on a low income, what kind of steps would you tell a friend maybe to take to be able to eat vegan?
Well, that's the strange irony of health food, is the more you process food, the less expensive it becomes. Whole wheat flour is more expensive than white flour, even though ostensibly whole wheat flour is a lot less processed than white flour. And a lot of it has to do with subsidies. This is the cost of a pound of beef. Like if you go to a supermarket and you buy a pound of beef, it's what, like $1 something? The reason a pound of beef is $1.25 is because every part of the production process is subsidized. And if a pound of beef was not subsidized, unsubsidized beef would cost about $30 a pound. So the reason it's cheaper to eat meat and to eat garbage is because bad food is subsidized. Okay. The water is subsidized, the transportation is subsidized, every aspect of it is subsidized, whereas like the organic food industry and the whole food industry, there's no subsidies. So when you buy organic brown rice, you're paying full price for the most part. If you buy a hot dog, it's so heavily subsidized that the government is paying for 80% of that hot dog. Yeah. So my advice to poor, hungry vegans, as I was one for a long time, I don't know, Whole Foods from the supermarket. Yeah.
Another thing I know that I really would like to hear about is the Institute of Music and Neurologic Function, how you got involved in that.
Well, I mean, I was raised by activists and hippies, and so I was raised with this idea that a big portion of someone's life should be spent involved in different social causes and working for social justice and being an activist, essentially. To wit. So I've gotten involved over the years in a lot of different causes, and then a few years ago a friend of mine came to me and he was working at a Beth Abraham Hospital in the Bronx with Oliver Sacks on this program that Dr. Sacks started called the Institute for Music and Neurologic Function. And it's music therapy, specifically looking at it from like a cognitive therapeutic perspective, because there's a lot of music therapy that has to do with like decreasing people's hospital stays. And like if you play music for someone before they go into surgery, during surgery, and after surgery, it can cut their recovery time in half because it's just calming and therapeutic and nice. What Dr. Sacks realized is that music therapy can actually be miraculous, which might seem like a loaded statement, but I'm trying to decide how pedantic I want to be. So up until about, I guess, 20 years ago, most neuroscientists believed that at a certain age, the brain just started dying off. Like by the time you're 10, you just started sloughing off brain cells. And there was nothing you could do to stem the tide of brain atrophy, as it were. And then recently they've realized that the brain, we're capable of growing new brain cells until the day we die, and called neurogenesis, which is really up until very recently they weren't aware of this. And so the combination of neurogenesis, the brain's ability to sort of regenerate itself, and also the brain's ability to rewire itself. So Dr. Sachs, working with people like stroke victims, people who are suffering from Alzheimer's, aphasic patients, people who've had serious brain trauma and have lost the ability, say, to speak or to walk. Through music therapy, you can help someone to relearn the ability to speak. So they found, like I've seen amazing footage of a 75-year-old woman who's had a very serious stroke and can't speak. She can still sing. Because I guess in the 19th century, the idea of phrenology, where they mapped the brain, and it was sort of discredited, but now they realize there is a phrenological component to contemporary neuroscience where there are speech centers. There are certain parts of the brain control different physical activities. And so if you've had a stroke and damaged the speech center of your brain, you can't speak. But music actually affects the entire brain. So you can almost bypass that damaged part of the brain through music therapy. And this is the miraculous part, like people who can't walk can dance. And it's the most amazing thing you've ever seen, a man in a wheelchair who can't get up. You play his favorite song from when he was 10 years old, and all of a sudden he's shuffling around. You turn off the music, he sits back down in his wheelchair. So by doing this day in, day out, eventually the brain regrows connections and bypasses damaged areas of the brain so that this person can not just dance and shuffle around, but can actually walk and regain, verbal abilities. I apologize for interrupting, but it's also, as far as I know, the only program in the world that discharges Alzheimer's patients. And people are admitted with early onset Alzheimer's through music therapy. Not that their Alzheimer's is cured, but it's basically arrested. And of course, it's not funded by the government. The NIH has deemed this, it's not worthy therapy.
What's it going to take to make it worthy therapy?
The ability for someone to profit from it. When you can have a huge, well-funded lobbying group going before Congress and saying, oh, we believe that the NIH should be funding music therapy because we can make a lot of money from it, that's when it will get the attention and the funding that it needs.
Do you get to have interaction with the patients there?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
That's the most amazing part.
Yeah, sounds like it'd be recharging.
It's hard, because it's a hospital in the Bronx, so it's not a particularly glamorous facility, it's not like going to some fancy, shiny place where it's like been newly decorated. It's grim, but they do amazing work there. And yeah, it's hard to talk about without getting a little bit verklempt or a little bit choked up. But some of the patients, they love the program.
Well, can you tell us, I know you're a little concerned about getting choked up. That's
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'll get choked up with you. Your last visit there, what was it like?
The last visit there was around Christmas, and Oliver Sacks, he's very busy, so he, there's a woman named Connie Tomeno who runs the program day in, day out. And so we brought some journalists up there, and Oliver Sacks was there, and some of the patients who were capable of doing so performed. And these are very, very sick people. People who've had all sorts of trauma. And this one woman, she's about, 22, 23, and she had seemingly an inoperable brain tumor, but it was operated on, and she was just very, very sick. A whole host of other conditions as well. And she sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow and talked about her story and how 6 months before this, she was given about 3 months to live. And, uh-oh.
That's okay.
And it makes, selfishly, it makes any problem that I might have or anything I might be dealing with seem so profoundly inconsequential, I guess selfishly, that's one of the reasons why I'm involved. It helped me to put anything I might be going through into such perspective that, yeah, it's hard. Like, I don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to complaining, you know.
Do you ever get to bring like your gear with you and you're rocking out with the patients or anything?
Yeah,
like
well, that's one of the, I mean, because I dropped out of college, so I'm certainly not a licensed music therapist, but what I've been able to do is I have a lot of equipment that I don't use anymore. It still works fine, but I don't use it, so I've been able to donate that. So we've actually built a couple of recording studios there. And yeah, so a lot of the different patients or clients are able to go into the recording studios and work on their own music. Awesome. And they have, yeah, so he's, okay, so he's a music therapist. I forget his name, he was a drummer in the 70s, and he played on a lot of like funk, soul, and disco records, and then he had a stroke. So we're able to hook him up with this little portable electronic drum set. Yeah. And she plays tambourine with her feet. No way. And that's what she's doing right there, is there's a little tambourine on her foot, and she just goes, because she can't move her arms. Yeah. Yeah.
And I know, like, I took a look at the Institute's website, and I know that there are, of course, the severe cases, but how does music for you, like I'm a person, I can get very anxious sometimes, and I know if I pull out my guitar, it definitely is very soothing. For yourself, do any of these theories, do you take anything home with you and apply it in your own life?
Well, it's interesting, because I mean, I've been playing music since I was 9 years old, and I mean, music is ubiquitous. And to be honest, we take it for granted. You know, we all love music, I'm assuming. And so I've always thought like, oh, music is fun, and I love it, and I've dedicated my life to it. But I've always seen it as just being sort of like, you know, a fun cultural aside. And then looking at the work that Oliver Sacks has done with music therapy, and then realizing, taking a step back and trying to look at music more objectively and dispassionately, and seeing, it doesn't exist. That's the amazing thing about music. Like, it's the only art form that you can't touch. You know, you can touch a painting, you can touch a sculpture, you can touch a photograph, you can even touch film. You know, you can hold up a frame from a film and look at it. Music, you can touch the delivery, you can touch a CD, but that's not music. That's just a piece of plastic and metal that's digitally encoded with music. So music, all it is the compression and rarefaction of air. You know, it's air moving a little bit differently. And you think what it can do. You know, this artistic medium that has literally no weight and no substance, it can make people cry. It can make troops march into battle.
What does it do for you, though?
Everything.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the power of music, is like, it can make you want to like blow up a building. It can make you sob inconsolably. It can, you know, it can transform depression into joy. I mean, it's amazing. Just how powerful this one medium is.
Well, let me ask you this. On a rainy day well, I mean, New York gets more rain than California, so rainy days are pointless. But on a pissed off day, what are you listening to?
Well, it depends what I want to do with the pissed off-edness.
Let's say you don't want to punch someone in the face.
If I want to, but there's like, you know, sometimes the most comforting thing to do with despair is indulge in it. Okay. Sometimes you want despair to go away, sometimes you want to deepen your experience of despair. Sometimes if I'm angry, I don't want to be angry. Other times I'm angry and I want to revel in the anger.
Which one do you tend to move towards first?
Anger, I mean, I grew up playing in punk rock bands, so I sort of like celebrating.
Okay. So you're celebrating that anger. What would you be listening to?
I like Pantera quite a lot. So, I mean, some speed metal, some old punk rock, where it's like the celebration, you know, like the celebration of anger. It doesn't mean encouraging anger, it just means like, you know what, you're pissed off, instead of being victimized by it, use it as an energy.
I just want to thank you very much for your time.
Oh, okay. Thanks.